Hey folks, Nathan here. This is mini Q&A number 13 here on the channel. Just recorded number 12, hence the red/maroon burgundy, whatever, Boba Fett shirt here. So those two episodes are recorded at the same time. They're recording answers to questions asked in mini Q&A number 11 when I had that blue Destiny shirt on. You can always tell which batches of episodes are recorded at the same time by what I'm wearing in that one, because I'll try to make sure it's always something different as we go from batch to batch. This will be the last of the episodes of the mini Q&A in this batch of recording. So if you want to ask any questions for the next mini Q&A or next batch of mini Q&A episodes, make sure that you put your questions in the comments under either this video or number 12, which also had this same shirt on. Okay? Terrific. So we pick up where the previous mini Q&A left off with 2 questions remaining. One I can answer in depth, and I think will be kind of fun. Another one, which I'm not sure how much I can answer, but hopefully I'll be able to give some insight on. And we'll start with that one first. This question comes in from Theo Fairbanks, who asks, I've got 2 questions about your old timeline. That is the Star Wars Timeline Gold, the final edition of which came out in August of 2018, and you can find it at starwarsfanworks.com/timeline. Okay, see? Plug out of the way. He asks, how many days does each movie last, and how did you discover this? What sources? So, I can't say with any certainty for any of the newer films, like the Disney-era films, or even the Clone Wars film. For the original 6 films, back around 2008, 2009, when I was working with primarily Jason Fry, as he was working on the Essential Atlas with Dan Wallace. And we were coming up with those dated battle maps where I was figuring out individual battle dates and stuff like that for the book to put into the maps. And I was working on, some specifics so we could figure out exactly how we wanted to put dates on the individual film maps for the book. Which of course resulted in me getting to do the in-universe calendar date in the digital format for the very first time for Return of the Jedi, which was awesome, and having a typo in an email back and forth with Leland Chee that wound up leading to a screwed up number in one of the dates for one of the other films. So awesome, yet damn at the same time. While we were working on that, because it might be needed for the process, Leland Chee exported a little chunk of the Holocron Continuity database for me. Holocron Continuity Database is exactly that. It is a database, and you could spit out information from it as, apparently, spreadsheets. And he sent me basically an Excel file with a bunch of worksheets on it. Worksheets being like the little sheets in an Excel file. You can click on the bottom and switch between them in case you're not familiar with it. That basically broke down the individual Star Wars films at that time, episodes 1 through 6, day by day. And in some cases had actual dates for those because they had been set by, galaxy-wide news nets or something. In other cases, it was just like day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. And my understanding was that this was stuff that was never published. So the idea was it was just kind of an internal thing in case stories were going to take place during the films. How do you reference them time-wise? So you don't run into issues like what happened with, say, the novel Order 66, where Karen Travis had Revenge of the Sith taking way longer than any other source did. It's the one time that I could think of when we were working on the Atlas where it came to a question of, well, are we going to use the newer dates, which is Order 66, or the dates in everything else? And usually newer information trumped older, but not this time. Everything else won her dates out because she didn't follow the dates that all other sources had used up to that point. So this file broke it all down. And I feel as though if I give specifics, I may be crossing a line because I don't know if they've been published elsewhere, and I don't know if it would be okay for me to share that. Even if that information only pertains to the Legends continuity, perhaps now, is that something I could share because it was sort of given specifically for that purpose. So what I can say is, when they figure out how many days a film tends to take, they were tending to look at specifically changes from day to night, or things that looked like obviously changes from day to day. And yeah, granted, maybe if it was, daytime on some planet at the same time as nighttime on another, then the change would be looking for the next one to be day or the next one to be night or whatever. I'm getting myself confused. But the idea was that, if you saw a day change, presumably you were looking at probably a day change, unless it made no sense in context of other things. Which also meant that when it came to like the amount of time that Luke spent on Dagobah, it was indeed very small. It was not that, the film jumped over something. I think they've actually tried to address that a little bit recently in one of the guidebooks where it talks about Ach-2 having this weird thing where time passes differently there than it does otherwise, so that some of the passage of time and the intercutting makes more sense in certain aspects of Last Jedi. But I think it mentions that it's similar to the way time passes on Dagobah, which suggests maybe that he was meant to look like he spent more time training, even though in reality it wasn't, because of some kind of time distortion or whatever. But they tended to use, just day-night cycles. And I can say for sure for you, to my recollection, the least amount of days any of the original 6 Star Wars films took was supposed to be around 6. The most, I believe, was 9 or 10. So the original Star Wars films tended to be like just shy of a week up to about a week and a half at most long. And generally speaking, if there were any gaps in days, it tended to be like near the end of a film, like the end of Phantom Menace, I remember right, had some days sort of buffered in to make room for like Qui-Gon's funeral to be a little bit after, the final victory and everything. So, hope that helps at least a little bit. I don't know how much specifics I can actually get into, though, without breaking confidence of having been provided those files in the first place. Suffice to say, when I was working on the timeline, especially in the later days, some of the newer stuff that was worked in, I did try to make sure as much as possible that whatever it was that I was doing timeline-wise matched up to what I saw within that information. So that may also give you a little bit of a guide if you peruse the Star Wars Timeline Gold. But again, with it being stuff directly from the Holocron, I'm not sure there's much more I can get into with that. So hopefully not an entirely disappointing answer, but maybe. And the last question, because it is a doozy. This will be the last one for this mini Q&A episode, and then for this batch. So the next episode starts new questions. We have one from Jonathan Confer, Senator Confer, who asks, staying with the Infinities question that you responded to back in mini Q&A number 11, what are the events that you could see changing episodes 1 through 3, Solo, Rogue One, episodes 7 and 8, in their own Infinities-esque comic, and what would the results be? Obviously something believable like Luke missing the final shot from A New Hope Infinities. Wow, so there's a lot of these. I don't know about like exactly how it would necessarily spiral out of control, but when I think of episode 1, I tend to think of things like, what if they hadn't run into Jar Jar? Which means they never got the help of the Gungans in the first place, which means no grand army at the end. Is it only a political solution available to Padme? Does the planet remain dominated, or do the Jedi and Republic eventually have to get involved, and so on? Let's see. Then you got the question there of, what if Maul hadn't gotten killed or sliced in half and then stuck on, was it Lotho Minor? For years until finally coming back. What if he had stuck around? Would Sidious have eventually gotten rid of him as an apprentice and brought in Dooku anyway? Or would he have stuck with Maul as part of his plan? And if so, who leads the other side in the galactic conflict known as the Clone Wars that we all know was a big part of getting rid of the Jedi and installing control over the galaxy? How does Palpatine get his dictatorship without a Dooku as the charismatic face of the other side? Because it surely isn't going to be Maul as the charismatic face of the other side. Is there someone he manipulates? Mina Bonteri or someone like that he manipulates instead? And then, of course, there's the what if Obi-Wan was fast enough to actually get into the room instead of being stopped by the last laser gate, so he and Qui-Gon are able to take on and take out Maul together with no Qui-Gon death, which theoretically means that maybe Qui-Gon breaks with the Order to some degree, because they weren't going to let him train Anakin. Maybe he decides he's going to anyway. Maybe Anakin is sort of a tag-along. It doesn't become a formal Padawan, because notice that he only gets accepted as a formal Padawan as kind of like a last request of Qui-Gon after Qui-Gon is already dead and the Council sort of changes its mind. Heck, maybe Obi-Wan being like a second faster saves the galaxy because no Vader to help Palpatine, perhaps. Episode 2, gosh. What if any of the assassination attempts on Padme managed to work? If Anakin hasn't started the relationship with her, does he have the same negative impact of losing her, or the fear of losing her that we see later that twists him into Vader and makes him sort of cut off himself from everyone else and become the servant of the dark side that he becomes? Let's see. Episode 2. What if when Dooku walks into the room and Obi-Wan says, "Traitor," right? And Dooku says, "Oh no, this is all a mistake. The Senate is being manipulated by a Sith Lord named Darth Sidious," which was true, except he wasn't telling the truth of him being a Sith Lord and the partnership and everything. What if Obi-Wan had said, "You know what? You're right. We can put aside our political differences. We need to root this out, and we need to do it now." Does Dooku wind up helping the Jedi take down Sidious and become the next big hero, perhaps a galactic ruler, or maybe the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and the idea of a confederacy rather than more of a federal system becomes widespread across the galaxy? Let's see, episode 3, what if Anakin, when Palpatine says, "Do it," what if Anakin was like, "You know what? No, I already said I shouldn't, and it's not the Jedi way. It's all right. He's going to stand trial. He'll get executed eventually, probably anyway." Does Dooku, now having been betrayed by Palpatine with the whole "do it" thing, does he spill his guts? And all of a sudden, poof, Palpatine is revealed to be who he actually is in a different fashion. Perhaps in a way that is much more public, so you don't wind up with the Jedi going and trying to take him into custody and winding up with so many of them dying and it being turned into an assassination attempt by the Jedi conspiracy. What if Anakin, it's like, he must stand trial, right? I need him. He's too dangerous to be left alive, and all that kind of stuff. Thank you very much. What if Anakin decides, "You know what, Mace? I kind of need him, but you're right. He is too dangerous to be left alive. You go right ahead." There's no one to continue twisting him to the dark side. No Emperor. No Empire. Do the Clone Wars then just end because the leaders of both sides are gone? Do we get an era of galactic peace? That can't be in Infinity's comic, because Infinity's is like What If, and What Ifs always turn out really hellish for everybody. Let's see. Revenge of the Sith also, right? The obvious one, which is, of course, what if either Anakin hadn't force-choked Padme enough to kill her, if you believe that was the root cause, or what if Padme had been buoyed up by the fact that she just had 2 freaking babies and didn't lose her damn will to live and actually lived on raising the children? Does she get perhaps hunted down by Vader? Is she a chance for Vader to be redeemed much, much sooner and turn on Palpatine so the Empire doesn't last as long as it did? Does she become the leader of a new rebellion, perhaps? All of those types of things, coming into play here. That one I think is probably the most interesting out of the ones probably for episode 3. Solo? Wow. What if Solo had managed to actually get back and save Kira? Instead of Kira eventually being handed off to or sold to Crimson Dawn and becoming the right hand of Dryden Voss. And she doesn't get twisted in the way that she did into the hardened version she became. What if she gets through the damn gate at the beginning and they actually escape together? Or flip side, what if Han is the one who gets stuck on the planet, who's probably just killed, right? And Kira makes it out. And if Han is killed, what does that mean for Chewie ever joining the rebellion? What does that mean for Chewie ever getting free or not? What does it mean for the rebellion if there's no Han Solo? Right? Does someone else take that part of the story? How do Luke and Obi-Wan and the droids get off Tatooine in A New Hope? And does the person who helps them then, Boshek, someone like that, does that person then wind up joining the rebellion and serving the role that Han did? We don't know. If there's no Han Solo around, is there someone else who marries Leia and their child winds up being Kylo Ren, or is there simply no Kylo Ren? And so on and so on. Just literally removing Han from the picture. Let's see. What if... Now, you could have Lando doesn't take the job. So then it winds up being a different ship they're using. Maybe they make it out, maybe they don't. But then there's not the friendship between Han and Lando eventually. Han doesn't have the Millennium Falcon, and so on. That sort of thing. I think that would all be very interesting paths to perhaps take for that one. Let's see. Or Dryden Voss wins the day, and maybe Han escapes, but he kills Kira instead of the other way around. Now Han is on a quest for vengeance against Dryden Voss that then drives him in the future. Let's see. Rogue One. What if any of them lived to actually be the heroes that they became? What if the Rebel Alliance had actually said, you know what, this actually does sound like a good idea. It's not too risky. Let's use our whole force to do it, instead of it having to be the Rogue One group who go out and carry out the mission. If nothing else, you don't have Rogue Squadron, because apparently in canon, Rogue Squadron is named in honor of the Rogue team, and they only got the name because Bodhi's an idiot, and when they asked for a call sign, people going against orders, one? Didn't have anything else to answer. Let's see. What if, Galen Erso didn't get killed and instead got recovered by Jyn and Cassian and the team? All of a sudden, they believe more, which may play into the rest of it. But they also have someone who actually knows the station inside and out. They don't have to get the plans and look for it. He can tell them a little bit more of where it is. Let's see. What if... what if Saw Gerrera just doesn't use he doesn't use Bor Gullet on Bodhi, or he uses Bor Gullet and doesn't trust the results and just kills Bodhi? The pilot's not there. That changes the role throughout the rest of that particular story. What if at the end of Rogue One, before the Tantive 4 could launch, as the guy says when he's pulling down the little, or right after pulling down the little lever and everything, what if Vader had gotten inside and continued slaughtering everyone, including Leia, and got the plans back? It's the same thing as a what if for the beginning of A New Hope, right? Where if they catch the Devastator catches the Tantive 4, or the Tantive 4, as it's apparently supposed to be called now, and boom, changes everything there. It's like all those, the memes, right? It's the something changes in a couple of different clips, and then just directed by George Lucas or directed by Rian Johnson or whatever. Let's see. What else was it? That's, I guess, 7 and 8. 7. What if the TIE fighter that has a Finn and Poe on it actually does get blown up, and they do both die, and it's only BB-8 on the surface? Does BB-8 still find Rey? Probably. Do they still find a way to the Resistance with only BB-8 being the one to be able to make it happen? And how do things continue from there? What if Finn decides that conformity is more important than the moral questions he has, and he doesn't, stand against orders there on Jakku, and just continues following orders and doesn't help Poe escape? Again, Rey probably still finds BB-8, maybe still finds the way back to the Resistance. We don't know. What if... let's see, when it comes to The Force Awakens, what if... and I think it's probably the last one for Force... Well, maybe I've got another one. But what if in The Force Awakens, when given the opportunity to take up Anakin/Luke's lightsaber, instead of running away, Rey takes it up at that moment? Which means that not only does Finn not fight with it moments later, but perhaps when Rey is finally found by Kylo Ren, she is armed with a lightsaber when they first meet. Does he get the lightsaber then and still take her into custody? Does she try to fight with no training without ever doing that, unlocking his mind and her mind and sucking up some of his training stuff as described in The Last Jedi novelization, where she stands even less of a chance, and does she simply get killed? And end of her story, and so on at the hands of Kylo Ren. The other thing would be, what if, my son is here, I'm looking at him right now. What if the, will you help me do what I need to do? I know what I need to do, but I'm not strong enough to do it, isn't I need to sacrifice my own father, but I'm not sure if I can. Ha ha, I did. What if it's actually, I don't know if I'm strong enough to turn away, and he actually does let go of the saber and walks out of there with Han. And all of a sudden, essentially, Snoke's apprentice becomes the greatest threat to Snoke. And you get a whole different battle on your hands at that point. Perhaps, something that goes in a completely different direction. Let's see, episode 8. Oh gosh, let's see. How about you got some close calls at different points. What if BB-8 doesn't get the weapons on the X-wing working again fast enough for Poe to be able to take out the last of the cannons, so that the Resistance ships can fully escape? Or what if Poe gets killed and is not able to cover the escape? What if the ship gets there a little bit earlier and destroys the Resistance base? It's all kind of going in the same general direction there. What if, instead of sticking around to destroy the Dreadnought, Poe actually follows frickin' orders and retreats? So he doesn't wind up getting busted down by Leia. So if and when something happens to Leia, Holdo frickin' trusts him, and you don't get a near mutiny, you don't get the mission off to Canto Bight, and instead, he's in on the plan all along, and you don't have all the drama on the ship. Although, the way it plays out, eventually going to Crate is probably going to wind up being the same. What if Rose doesn't wind up happening to catch Finn trying to leave, and those two never pair up, never come up with the plan that they come up with? What if DJ turned out to be a villain with a heart of gold who doesn't wind up turning on them, rather than the one who turns on them? Now, granted, it looks like they were caught, and then he struck a deal, but even then, that would mean that they wouldn't have known about the ships going down to the surface of Crate, right? What if, while, turning the lightsaber to strike true, what if Snoke sensed the turning of the lightsaber right next to him, was like, good try, you little dickhead, and then, killed Kylo and killed Rey or something? What if Luke had survived his whole force projection thing? What if he had allowed the connection between Kylo and Rey to continue to form without interrupting it? What if Rey accepted the deal, thinking that she, like Ulic Qel-Droma, could fight the dark from the inside, and she would join with Kylo to try to turn him to a better path, thinking that she could withstand the pressures of doing so? That sort of thing. A lot of cool possibilities spiraling out of all of it. Hey, what if one of the things that Rey learned early on Ahch-To wasn't to lift rocks, and everybody was killed by the First Order? Right. All kinds of different ways you could go with it. I'd love to see more Star Wars Infinity stories out there, but I don't see Marvel being willing to do it, which is unfortunate, because Marvel really kind of pioneered that sort of thing in comics with What If. You would think if anyone is going to do that type of story for Star Wars, it would be Marvel. But they haven't seemed to have a willingness to go in that direction in the way that Dark Horse did with Infinities. So hopefully we'll see something like that someday, but not quite yet. Hopefully some of those were interesting to you. Hopefully that first question's answer wasn't quite as disappointing as I think it was, because I couldn't divulge as much. But I appreciate you guys posting questions, both in this video, the last one, and all the way back through this series. Again, if you want to have questions in upcoming mini Q&A episodes, the next batch, once the shirt color changes, starting with the next episode, make sure you put your questions in the comments of either this episode or the previous episode where I was wearing this shirt, and they will be pulled to be able to be used for future mini Q&A episodes the next time I record a batch all at once. And of course, if you want access to exclusive monthly Q&A episodes where you're definitely going to get your questions answered and have them among only a few in a little bit more detail, definitely check out my Patreon, patreon.com/NathanPButler. Those who are members of the Nobility of the Butlerniverse, that is a $10 tier of support on Patreon, get access to those monthly Q&As every single month. And don't have to wait for a mini Q&A, or wait through a bunch of questions in a mini Q&A, or run the risk of their question not being answered and chosen for a mini Q&A. So definitely some cool perks there. But thank you very much for watching these episodes. I will be back with more mini Q&As as more questions pile up.